So hi again, everyone. If you are just joining, welcome, welcome, welcome. We are so excited to be with you today. Here, when C-Suite Coach partners with Black Ambition, we pack it all in. So we have a very fun and full agenda for you today with all information that is going to leave you with action items, homework assignments, and craving more. So please stay connected with us. Folks are joining and trickling in. And as you are joining, what we would love to know is what kind of business you have, where you're joining from, even what you're hoping to get out of today's session. So we'll give it just a minute and then we'll start with remarks. I also want to call your attention to the screen where you can see not only who some of our amazing speakers are today, the reason why you joined, but also you will be able to see some of the amazing Black Ambition Prize winners. So it is always the season to support Black business. We try to do it year round, but we also want to make sure as you're planning any purchases in February, you pay special attention to some of these amazing business owners as well. So again, please drop us in the chat who you are, where you're joining from. We have more Louisiana in the building. Okay, so I know y'all came for Sevetri. We got a lot of Louisiana in the building. Really excited about that. And we also have more businesses coming in. So digital marketing strategy and product specialty. We also have another virtual pop-up. And we have some folks from Miami happy to be here and learning more about how to pitch. So that's really going to be part of the conversation that we get into today with Sevetri. So we'll give it just one more minute and we'll kick off. But if you haven't let us know who you are and where you're joining from, we want to hear from you. So please go ahead and put that in the chat. And thank you all for all of those beautiful faces that are on camera. I love an on-camera hangout. It's so fun. Okay, we have Long Beach, California in the building. Smocks Media Group, amazing. Love to see it. Love it, love it, love it. Okay, and we have the DMV represented. We have Kadidja from Philly. I can't wait to hear from her. Kadidja has so many cool things going on. That is so exciting. We also have Brandy from Michigan. We have California, Los Angeles in the building. Brooklyn, Ronisha, hello, girlfriend. And we have Oakland, California, more from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. All right, so keep those coming. Go ahead, let us know what your business is. It's always a good time to network. So go ahead and let us know who you are and where you're joining from. Yes, keep that coming in the chat. All right, so it is now 3:03. As I mentioned, we have a packed agenda and I want to make sure we have as much time as possible for our content. So without further ado, I want to kick it over. Some of you have even put in the chat, I want to learn more about Black Ambition. I want to learn more about the Black Ambition Prize. And so that is one of the things we want to make sure you have ample opportunity to hear about. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Christine Joseph from Black Ambition, who will introduce herself and why Black Ambition is doing so many amazing things for founders. So without further ado, I'll kick it over to Christine. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well and staying healthy. My name is Christine Joseph and I am the Community Manager for Black Ambition Prize. Now, I'm excited to welcome you to this session with Black Ambition and C-Suite as a coaching session for you all. And Black Ambition, as many of you may know, is a nonprofit initiative founded by Pharrell Williams to provide capital and access to Black, Latinx, and HBCU students. We're excited to launch the 2022 prize cycle, and HBCU students, recent alumni, and non-student business founders who identify as Black and or Latinx and are pursuing media and entertainment, healthcare, tech, consumer products and services, and Web 3.0 are all encouraged to apply. We'll award several cash prizes, including our signature grand prize amount of $1 million, along with a variety of mentoring and learning opportunities for the winning cohort. Now be sure to follow us on social media at Black Ambition Prize and follow our newsletter at blackambitionprize.com to learn so much more about the Black Ambition Prize competition and the resources that we provide to our founders. Now we've partnered with C-Suite to offer quarterly sessions to create a space for peer learning, thought partnership, networking, and collaboration. Our goal is to equip you with new tools and proven strategies to help you achieve your personal and business goals. Now, with that, I'd like to turn this over to Angelina Darrisaw for a few tips on successfully cultivating virtual relationships. Angelina?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Christine. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with you. This is our second event with Black Ambition. And to Christine's point, we will be doing one of these every quarter. One of my biggest passions in life is for sure connecting with other Black and Latinx founders and making sure we are creating community first and foremost, but also we're upskilling. We're finding opportunities to share resources with each other. So I have a brief presentation for you, and I just want to give you a layout of what's going to happen today. I'm going to present with you a couple of tips, things that you should be keeping in mind when you're thinking about building relationships remotely. Effective communication is really key to that. And as you're building relationships, one of the things you might want to build relationships for is to pitch, increase opportunities to grow your business, to land more business. And so later in the event, we will hear from Sevetri Wilson, who has done this so successfully. Sevetri has been in business for 13 years. Her company is amazing. She's an author. She speaks about topics like these all the time. And I have another surprise in store for you. You're also going to hear from Kadidja Dosso of Doso Beauty, who is doing amazing things. She's actually a Black Ambition Prize winner, and her business is scaling very quickly. So I can't wait to read off some of her accomplishments so you can see how Black Ambition is helping. So I'm going to turn over to sharing some slides, and we are just going to dive right in here. Let me put us in presenter view. This is always the fun part when you're getting into sharing slides. All right, so there's so much happening when it comes to building relationships. And right now we are at a time where most of the relationships that we're forming are happening in a virtual space. So with that being said, there's a lot of differences and a lot of challenges, but there's also a lot that we have been doing offline that we can move online as well. To set the stage, first, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Angelina Darrisaw. I'm the CEO and founder of C-Suite Coach. We have been in business for going on 7 years, and we put together training resources and programming for Black and Latinx audiences, both employees within organizations as well as business owners. We also staff coaches to support and develop these groups. So really excited about that work. And because of that, these are topics that are near and dear to me. So I always like to say, whenever we're in a virtual room, we're a community, we're business owners, we can be helping each other, we can be supporting each other, we can be learning from each other. So some of you have already gotten started, but go ahead and drop in the chat, if you haven't already, who you are, where you're joining from. What do you want to learn today? What's something you're hoping to get out of the session? And because we're all experts in our own experiences, we also need to hear from you. What's your best networking tip? Or what have you done to manage relationships really well in this season? So go ahead, throw one or many of those things in the chat. Would love to hear from you. And so as you're doing that, I'm going to just dive in and let you know what to expect today. I want to talk a little bit about communication as part of the core of building relationships. And that really is something that, again, as we talk about things that can be managed online and things that can be managed offline, that really does set the stage, is having strong communication skills. And it's more important now than ever, because some of the things that we used to be able to pick up on when we were in person, we really have to be more attuned with in a virtual environment. All right, then we're going to talk quickly about networking with intention. I'll give you a couple tips for best practices in virtual networking, and then we'll talk about some of the things you can do to turn your customers into advocates. So it'll be a breeze through some of these key topics. But first and foremost, I want to hear from you as business owners. What are some of the challenges of communications? What are the risks and what are the opportunities? And I'll give just a second for that to come into the chat as well. I will tell you, for me, as you're putting in your pieces, and I'll call and read some out, one of the biggest challenges for me about communication, about networking, has always been capacity. So as your business is scaling, it can be really difficult when you go out there, when you network, when you make more relationships, then sometimes that means more to add to your to-do list, right? More follow-up, more things on your plate, and you're busy building. You're building your product, you're building your service, and it can feel a little bit overwhelming at times. Another part that has been challenging for me at times when I think about communication, when I think about networking, I also think about how sometimes as I was pivoting in my business, so in 7 years, where we started is not where we are today. The value proposition changed and my own confidence needed to grow in order to be able to effectively communicate what we were doing and doing well. And then I also just think some of the challenging questions as you're getting started, the newer you are, the harder it might be to answer some of those hard-hitting questions that might come from folks who are interested in learning about your business. So those are some of the challenges I faced early on. But what I recognize is the risk does not outweigh the opportunity, because at all of those challenges that I mentioned, a lot of that could be solved with stronger relationships, with good network. Now, as I mentioned, communication is the core to building effective relationships. So that's why we're starting there, because especially in a virtual environment, communication is more meaningful and sometimes it can be more challenging to manage. Let me see in the chat just a couple of things that you all put in here that are really important. So identifying which specific connections you need to reach your goal, right? How do I know? I have limited time. Who are the right people that I should be checking in with? Also, we have some trainers who speak on this topic. Love that. There's always room for more growth is what I'm hearing. And also we hear managing people across different time differences geographically. And I imagine there's also some cultural elements to that as well. So I just want to remind you all that communication really is an opportunity. It can happen anytime. It is something that happens anytime we're interacting with others. And the way we communicate impacts how we professionally progress, right? So if I meet someone and they have an opportunity, even things so much as what is the window in which I continue to build that relationship? Am I following up immediately or am I waiting 3 months, right? At that point, they may not remember connecting with me. All of those things matter. Really having a strategy around how we communicate, when we communicate, all of that is the seed for how we're building relationships. And it's really important to understand how communication occurs. We have things that we're hearing and we interpret, but then there's an audience that we always have to be paying attention to and considering how they're interacting with us, how they're interpreting information as well. So at the end of the day, communication is key. And if you want to have better professional outcomes, you really need to be thinking about how do I make sure I'm enhancing and being more effective in my communication style. It matters especially for leaders as well. As your leadership profile grows, what you communicate is more important. So I remember early on, back in the day when Instagram, Twitter was first getting launched. Twitter launched when I was in grad school, I believe. And I was like, what do I do on these platforms? And many of us maybe have been there. If you were on Twitter 10 years ago, put one in the chat. Over a decade ago, your tweets probably looked a little crazy, probably looked a little random. You know, I would tweet about my walks to work or different things. And there was not really an intention or a thought behind brand or what I'm posting. But as your profile, one, as these platforms grew, but also as your profile grows and you're thinking more about how you want to be represented, how you want your business to be represented, what you communicate becomes more meaningful. It's also important because you all are leaders, you're business owners, and research says that 91% of employees say communication is really the key thing that drives down their relationships with their executives, with their leaders. So we want to make sure we're effective communicators. There's communication theory that just talks about there's two dynamics that are going on. We have the pieces that we hear, and then we also have the pieces that are interpreted. So has anyone ever heard of the term shared understanding? Put one in the chat if you've ever used that term or heard that term. Okay, I'm seeing people wave. Okay. Love it. All right, so essentially what that is trying to get to a place, if you've ever been in an orientation or an onboarding for a training program, anything like that, one of the things you might do is lay out something called ground rules. What are the expectations? What are the rules we're setting for how we're going to engage? But the reality is that might happen in formalized settings, but that doesn't always happen when we're meeting one-on-one. So what we need to be seeking to do is creating shared understanding as much as possible, so that we can make sure we're communicating more effectively and people can better interpret what we want them to hear, right? So this is one of the things I want you to be thinking about a lot. I also think about giving instructions, or for me, when I'm communicating, I'm so in the weeds of what I do with my business, I have to make sure that I figure out ways to make it make sense to people outside of my realm, outside of my industry. Now, you might think, well, only the people in my industry really matter to my business. But what I found is opportunity is sitting everywhere. And when you're thinking about scaling and growing your business, anyone can be helpful to you if you know how to effectively communicate to them what you do. When I first was getting started, I remember telling one of my really good friends, oh my goodness, I'm so stressed out. I hate going to networking events because everyone always wants to talk about what I do. And sometimes I feel like they don't understand it. Sometimes I feel like I'm having a hard time explaining it because it's a very specific B2B type of business. And the feedback that I got from my friend that I still carry with me is, look at that as an opportunity to constantly be pitching and editing how you communicate what you do to different audiences. And so I did. I would go everywhere. If I was in a bodega and someone asked me what I did, if I was in an Uber, if I was at a networking event, anywhere, I tried to get better and better at explaining what I did. What ended up happening was I got really hard-hitting questions. People asked for more detail. People challenged me to communicate in different ways, and I got stronger and stronger at my pitch over time. So there were two big impacts. One, I got better at explaining myself and communicating by letting everyone hear it and trying to have different lenses giving me feedback. And then two, I was surprised to find that people who were not directly in my industry often had opportunities for me. I don't do what you do, don't know too much about that, but I know someone who has an opportunity and is looking for X. So I say that to say, don't think that the only network that matters are the people directly in your industry. There's often opportunity that's sitting in other spaces as well. Okay, and I'm seeing some things in the chat I'm gonna call out. Smock says, literally, my transferable skills from the world of education helps with our communication efforts now. Love that. Okay. And also folks are hoping to work on networking. So we'll talk about that in just a second. Now, there was an article that talked about some fundamentals of impactful communication, because I'm not going to tell you it's important and not share how to do well. But one of those pieces is really thinking about being complete in what you share. So completeness, making sure you're taking that into consideration, sharing full detail. Also conciseness. I think often about, especially in written communication, how much the first point of interaction someone has with us is on these little devices, right? So what that means is if I'm reading an email, I may not be able to see the whole business plan in the body of the email. I might need that high bullets, your formatting. All of those pieces are really important. Using bold, highlighting certain things to make your points really clear and being concise. Being considerate, right? So what this essentially means is stepping into the shoes of who you're communicating with, really thinking critically about your audience. So if I'm talking to someone who I might try to be negotiating a deal with, that might be different points than I'm sharing with someone who could potentially be an advocate or a sponsor for my business. So really taking into consideration your audience, being really concrete. One of my favorite things to do that I've learned from business development experts in emails is always ending with an ask. What do I want? I never end email saying, let's chat about this soon. It's always, when can we chat? Or what is the next best step here? So that the communication flow continues to move forward and hopefully eventually meets my goals. Being really clear, having clarity in what you want and what your goal is, what the goal of the message. Always courteous. This is really important in this time as we're all going through so much. You know, during the last year, There are so many people, both from a client standpoint, contractor standpoint, that have experienced loss of all different types, right? So it's really important to just be courteous in how you reach out to people and consider their timing as well when you're reaching out. And then the last piece is correctness. So this is one that I just always am striving to get better at. Making sure your spelling and grammar is on point. It sounds very basic, but it's very important because it says a lot about the professionalism of you, of your brand, and it can influence how people see you, whether or not they want to do business with you. So it is really important to add that into the mix. So it's important as you're thinking about that to know your audience. Really make sure that you come across as knowledgeable in what you're communicating. Perhaps, for example, if you ever have thought about sharing your pitch, you might share a little bit about the background of yourself, of your team, why you're invested in this particular topic. Really share that story. Don't be afraid to share the story. When connecting with new people, especially if one of your goals in that connection is to grow your business, I always love the idea of listening more than you speak, because we know what we do well. We know how we can solve problems, but if you want to get really good at getting that person to want to connect with you further, listen to what their problem is, and then bring in that analytical consultant hat. Okay, here's how my product or my service can solve your problem. So really thinking about your audience and your customers is key. And then we can't do it as much, but it is always important to think about those nonverbal communication pieces as well. So in a virtual world, what does that look like? How do you make sure that you yourself is present so that the person on the other end really can see that you care about the relationship? So all of that are some of the keys. Those are some of the basics. When you're building relationships, it starts with effective communication. And now that we've been in this space where we've been virtual for a while, it's important for us to think about those things that really worked offline that now need to move online, right? So stating the story of who you are, having that strong mission, the strong understanding and sharing of your values is important. You want to lead with the value that you bring. Hopefully you have an elevator pitch, or you're continuing to work and modify an elevator pitch that you can adjust to different audiences. You want to share the story of why you launched. You want to also make sure that you are practicing those things that you preach. So for example, I have a business, and one of the things we do is we offer training and development for Black and Latinx owned businesses. So that means when I, as a business owner, am looking for vendors for my own business, I also like to make sure that we're spending money when we can with Black and Latinx owned businesses. So the photography companies we might use for events, the videography, other vendors, any other resources, when we're doing gifting for our clients at the end of the year, bringing in Black owned businesses to do that, right? So that's also part of how you develop relationships, by showing that the values that you're leading with, you're actually practicing them. It's also important as you're thinking about for yourself as a business owner, making sure that you do have established processes. So for employees, for contractors, and even for clients, what are the expectations? Have I set that early on? We talk about it a lot as business owners. Maybe there are some capacity issues you're working through. So one of the things that you can do to keep relationships intact is set that expectation with clients. Well, here's where we are. We've all seen it with supply chain shortages and all of that, right? So you want to make sure you're letting people know, here's actually when you could expect this delivery or this shipment. Over communicate, let people know what to expect. The same goes with service-based businesses. We are oversubscribed. That's my new favorite word, by the way, right now, but we would be able to revisit this or work on this if we have a wider timeline. Does that work for you? That's how you keep the relationships intact. When I started, I mentioned, one of the things that was challenging for me when I was meeting new people was there was just so much influx, right? So many people that wanted to connect once you met them, and being able to send that email, but let them know, hey, here's where we are from a capacity standpoint. Can we touch back again at this point? That helps keep the relationship intact. All right. And then also you want to have cadence and methods for communication. You want to make sure that you've established that with any potential clients, with any other key advisors or mentors that you're going to be networking with, and that you also have systems that encourage that collaboration. And then again, we talked about this, but there are some other things that worked in person that may not work remotely. So long meetings, you know, the long 3 hours in person, we can run out, get lunch, all of that, that may not work. Having multiple meetings in a row may not work as well. You yourself may get drained from that. So you want to think about adjusting to having lesser meetings and also shorter meetings. One of the things that you can set up in your calendar, I love it, instead of 30-minute meetings, you can set up the 25-minute meetings, or instead of an hour meetings, the 50 minutes. So you can change what those expectations are and give yourself a buffer in between meetings as well. You also want to think about leveraging shared collaboration tools so you can get feedback when needed from customers, from clients. And then to find new norms. When we're working from home, some of the things that we maybe thought were expectations in an in-person world may not work, right? I might have had to show up in business casual all day. It may not make sense for me in certain situations to put on a blazer as I'm sitting at home every day. So there might be some norms that might have to shift as well, but you want to make sure that you're communicating that. Now, I also think it's important to think about innovation when we're managing some of this digital fatigue. So how might your strategies need to change as we're online? What are some of the things you might want to be doing differently? If you yourself are hosting meetings or digital events, what can you offer to make your company stand out? And are there any services that you might need to pivot as well? This is one of the things that can really help drive new relationships if you're showing something new that maybe your customers might need that they may not have needed in the past. And now they can rely on you to fill in that gap. A couple last tips for you around virtual networking, because there's so much coming up. There's so many conferences that you can step into. If you're going to a conference coming up, this is really important, right? Doing your research before events. One of the things I love to do before an event is I like to take a look at the whole agenda as soon as it's live. Are there speakers that I want to make sure I'm building a relationship with? Do I have any clients or target clients that are going to be present at this conference? If so, do they have anyone speaking? Are they sponsoring any way? Do they have a booth? This is some of the research that you can be doing to build out a strategy for making those strategic connections. Being early to the event. So we had that happen today, which was so awesome, because then there's also, as people are getting started, sometimes extra room to build relationships, extra room to introduce yourself, whereas it might be a lot harder after the event, right? So to the extent you can, this is another good habit. You also want to think about introducing yourself when commenting or when you have a point to make in the chat, letting people know who you are. This is really important. We can build relationships in any room, and letting people know who you are. Even I see some of you have your full name, but some of you have the name of your brand as how you're showing up in the chat. So that's another way you can build relationships and get your brand out there. And then you want to be engaging as often as possible. This helps everybody in the room see who you are. You become very present. And it also helps the presenters, if those are people that you want to build relationships with, have more of an opportunity to remember you and engage with you. So to the extent you can, do that. And then last but not least, I would say plan your follow-up. So if you had a goal, for which you should, because your time is a resource too, if you had a goal for any of the events or conferences or even training sessions you were going to attend, how are you going to plan your follow-up in order to make sure that that was a good use of your time, right? Do you have draft emails on go with a pitch deck or a plan of action, some key highlights about your business? These are some of the things that you can automate to make that networking more effective and efficient for you as well. And then when we're in virtual environments, there's a lot of great things you can do. I always think it is went to the extent you can. You know, there's always a lot of barriers and different things going on, but it does help when you can show up on camera because it helps put a face to the name, which is really important. And then also making sure that your background isn't distracting. One of my favorite things, I sadly don't have this going on right now, but I love it when I see it, is when people have their brands in the background, because that also gives you an opportunity to not only, now I have the name, the face, and the brands, and I'm thinking about that as I'm connecting with you. You want to display your company branding wherever you can. And then if you're having one-on-one meetings, you want to be learning about the culture of the company, and that can help you establish, how do I want to show up? Is this something that requires more formality? May I have to put on a blazer when I'm at home if that's kind of the client expectation? All of that stuff makes a difference. And then keeping to make sure that you are adding to the event versus being a distraction. So when I'm not speaking, is my microphone muted? And you want to, again, engage on social as well. That's another good way to stand out and build relationships and get follow-up meetings as much as possible. So those are just some quick tips I wanted to share. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chats. But now that we have gotten through that, and we'll have more time for questions in the end. So if you have any tips, questions, anything you want to hear, go ahead and put that in the chat. But right now, as you're doing that, I'm really excited to introduce you to our next speaker. So Kadidja Dosso is the founder and CEO of Doso Beauty LLC, which is an organic and cruelty-free cosmetics, hair care, skincare, and beauty supply company within the beauty space. And so they do amazing things, providing clients with quality organic cosmetics, skincare, hair care products. Everything is gender neutral. It's also at an affordable price point, and they strive to ensure all genders, races, and creeds understand the importance of self-care. One of their hero products is the pre-stretched hypoallergenic braiding hair. So this, just talking about it makes me want to go buy some, get my hair done. And they are set apart by really having a true commitment to offering organic and cruelty-free products. So this is really important. One thing that's always heavy on my mind is thinking about the environment. They also have sustainable package, and they have been certified as cruelty-free and vegan by PETA. So many, many great things here. I just want to show you a couple of the amazing accomplishments of Kadidja Dosso, who has been a Black Ambition Prize winner. And with that, I will turn it over to Kadidja, who's also going to share with you from her perspective some of the importance of this topic, building relationships and articulating your value in conversations. So I will kick it over to Kadidja, and please keep the comments and questions coming in the chat. Kadidja.
Awesome. Hey guys, can you guys hear me okay? You good? Well, I hope that everybody's having an awesome day today. It's a great Wednesday, and I'm super excited to chat more about my experience and tell you guys a little bit more about my story and how Black Ambition has helped me to scale my business, which really the seed started when I was 3 years old. So funny story. The idea for Doso Beauty really started and began when I was 3 years old. Me, my mom, and my grandma, we got into an argument about the difference between a braid and a twist. And I'm like, no, mommy, this is a braid, but it was a twist. And she's like, no, girl, it's not. Once they taught me how to braid, I literally was braiding everything in my house, from the blinds to the rugs, everything I could get my hands on. And at a really young age, I really became obsessed with making things beautiful and the reaction that it came from people. So my 6th grade picture, which is sitting on my living room table, is of me with my braids for my first 6th grade picture that my mom allowed me to go to school with. Now, when I look at it now, I'm like, girl, but I saw what my mama saw in me, which was that I had such great potential to be great. And so I continued to practice throughout middle school and throughout high school. And I started to do my friends' hair. And I went to Hampton University for college. And at Hampton, my side hustle was doing hair in the dorm room. And in Hampton is really where I started to formalize this idea or this dream, when I used to say that I want to build an organic beauty empire. And I was able to, in one of my classes, complete my very first business plan, which I actually have right here. It was at the time called building the Doso organic beauty empire, right? And so the idea of Doso Beauty came from me having a lack of access within, I'm from West Philly. So within the West Philly community, there weren't any Black owned beauty supply stores, right? I'm in high school, I tried to work at the local beauty supply store and they told me no, right? I got so many no's, but I said, let me just do my own little due diligence and research. And so when I would go into the different beauty supply stores, I would look at the ingredients on the back of the products and I couldn't pronounce none of the names. And now I know y'all know what I mean by that, right? So if I couldn't pronounce it, and then I asked the store clerk if they could pronounce it or tell me what was in the products, but I knew that I saw that those same products were damaging our hair, our skincare, right? Where they're being sold by people that didn't look like us. I knew that there was a disconnect and an opportunity for me to then create a pathway for us to be connected, the owner to be connected to the consumer. So fast forward throughout college, again, built my business plan out, but didn't really know how I was going to start. So I decided that I was going to go to New York and become a management consultant at one of the top 4 firms, which then I was just like, well, I'm going to make a good amount of money. I'm going to go to New York. I'll figure it out from there. So as a consultant, there's something called being on the bench. So I had been at 4 months into my consulting job, fresh out of college, and I was on the bench. Now in college, I was super involved. Pledged Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, was super involved on campus at Hampton. And I found myself honestly being very idle. And I didn't feel as though, I was fulfilling my goals, right? Or what God had destined for me. And so after staying away for like 3 days, I decided, you know what, Kadidja, I don't know how you're going to start Doso Beauty, but you're going to apply for our articles of integration, right? So I applied for my articles of organization and I started Doso Beauty. And I said, all right, cool. Well, I've noticed that this trend of mink eyelashes has started, to become more popular thing. So maybe I'll try it out and I'll test it out. So started off with lashes and a couple girlfriends was like, yeah, I'll buy from you. And then my guy friends were like, Kadidja, like, I don't wear lashes, but I really want to support you. So with that being said, I've expanded from lashes up into 100 now, 150 different SKUs and products that really are gender neutral and well encompassing. And again, remember, I said I'm a beauty supplier, right? So I'm a beauty supplier and wholesaler. So I have different products within the category. Now, I want to talk real quick about numbers before I get into the power of networking that Black Ambition really helped me out, but also that my Hampton network had helped me out with, and also with my personal network helped me out to grow the business. So year 1, I started the business in 2018 with the mink eyelashes, with my kitchen version of the whipped shea butter, with the hair elixir because I was growing my hair out and I needed, to get sold, with the different pop-up shops that I was doing in New York City. I actually made $1,000. And I was like, wow, like that's really cool. Starting in February, made $1,000. All right, year 2, I got going. I did a few more pop-ups. I decided I wanted to optimize my website a little bit more, learned with SEO, and that actually became a thing. And if you don't know, SEO is search engine optimization. So I started to get going with that. So by the end of year 2, I did 5K. Now, year 3, I've already got my feet and my heels and my big toe is in the water. So now I'm like, all right, girl, you have to swim. Like, what's going to happen? We did 5,000 last year, 1,000 the year before. And so by the end of year 3, I actually did $20,000, right? Which was like crazy to me. Because mind you, I'm working a full-time job as a management consultant. And if you know that, then you know that that means 50 to 60 hour work weeks, right? On top of having this side hustle, quote unquote, at the time. Now, the reason that we did 20K was because after doing tons and tons of research and R&D and finding my hero product, which Angelina mentioned is our pre-stretch hypoallergenic braiding hair, I understood that, wow, like this is a product that people have been looking for, including myself, for years, for decades. Now, remember earlier I said the difference between Doso Beauty, or what I saw my business being, is that I was also a part of the consumer journey, and I was a consumer of the type of products that I was selling. Most of the products that are in the industry that I'm in within beauty are owned and sold by white people, right? White men, people who have Asian descent, who are not connected to the products theoretically. They just are great at marketing, right? They might have the funding and the resources to be able to put these products into the right places to get them to scale. But keeping that understanding that I was directly connected to the consumer, I started to play more so into the ethos. And I understood that these are products that we not only wanted, but that we needed. And so this is where Black Ambition came into play. So after year 3, I applied in February of last year to Black Ambition Prize for the HBCU track. I had some people on my team that I knew from Hampton that were still in school at the time. So I was like, well, this will be the great position for us to just apply for the prize, right? Not just for the money, but more so for the network and Pharrell, right? So I'm like, this is an amazing network that we're trying to build. So this is a great first step. Now, there's a couple key things about the Black Ambition Prize application that actually helped me to expand my mind in ways that I hadn't done so before. And the questions that they asked on the actual application really made me think about my business deeper, right? From a community perspective, not just saying, hey, I have braiding hair. Hey, I have edge control. Hey, I have shea butter. It was like, how is your business really impacting the community? And as I did more research and I started to really sit with those questions and fill out those answers, I really started to think about, hey, there are so many people out here that suffer from skin and scalp conditions that they actually need these products, right? There are so many people out here who want and need to see other businesses, small businesses that started from an idea when they were a child to grow and manifest into an actual business. And so after I started to think about that and actually fill out the application, one of the key things that I remember putting into our pitch deck was that I projected that we were going to 13x our $20,000 revenue by the end of the year, right? Now, mind you, this is February, but in my mind and also my proof of concept, I started to doing wholesale deals, right, with other companies overseas. I started to get inquiries coming in from Walmart and from Amazon saying, hey, we see that you're a buzzing business, so we think that you have a really great growth opportunity. And so really doing the numbers and then saying that we had we would 13x our revenue the year before is what I think that helped to boost up our application and to really catch the eye of Black Ambition. And so after we did that, we went throughout the application process of Black Ambition, you also are put into different cohorts, right? And so we were given a mentor, which is amazing. My mentors are amazing from Black Ambition, who helped us to kind of drive and kind of like strategically help us to move our businesses in a way that we saw that we wanted to go, but might not have had the resources, right? And so, for example, I had been looking for a manufacturer because, again, if you are familiar with New York apartments and New York real estate, I was in a 2-bedroom apartment surrounded by boxes of braiding hair because I had to get the products out. So I knew that I needed to have some type of fulfillment center. And so I utilized my mentors' connections through Black Ambition to be able to procure a great deal with now a fulfillment center that we've been using, and that's been optimizing our business so much quicker. So that's just one of the ways that we've been able to do that. I was also able to cultivate a cohort of different colleagues or peers of sorts who are also in the CPG space, the beauty space as well too, whereas though we can kind of with one another and say like, hey, here's these other grants that are available. Hey, did you guys think about utilizing this tool for your team in order to optimize it? And so, having that network and having that those weekly and bi-weekly conversations that Black Ambition helped to provide us helped me to not only have accountability partners, but to stretch my mind and stretch where my business could really grow. Now on the slide that Angelina showed before, I'm not going to flex too much, and you guys will see it afterwards, but after having winning the grand prize of Black Ambition, a few accomplishments that we've had was, of course, winning $250,000 of funding, which is amazing for our business. We had never had any seed funding, so this is our first funding that was, dilutive, which means that they don't have ownership into Doso Beauty. So we still are fully owned by ourselves. We also just launched our first billboard 2 weeks ago, which is amazing in Philly. And so from a brand recognition standpoint, we've been able to, expound our reach into how people learn and know about Doso Beauty. We also just got placement into GoPuff, which is a 30-minute delivery service within 72 different cities around the US. People will be able to get Doso beauty products. And they are also one of our wholesale customers. So meaning that, hey, they're going to buy our products in bulk, and then they have to worry about getting it out to the consumers, not us. So that was a great part. And then in tangent with GoPuff, we also are part of the Chris Paul Put Me On program, which is basically another accelerator program that'll help us to get really ready for retail, help us to really get good at our supply chain operations, understand what it takes to get into the big box stores like Walmart, like Amazon, and like Target. So those are just a few key accomplishments. I do want to leave some time. I know I'm 15 minutes in, so I definitely want to leave time to see if there's any questions that people have.
We do have questions for you. First of all, we're like all cheering you on in the chat. Kadidja, you are such a powerful storyteller. Amazing. When we talk about leading with your mission, your values, you did that. So thank you so much for sharing your story. We're hearing comments, divine alignment. This is so inspiring. Black excellence. This is awesome. Whoop, whoop. So first of all, thank you for sharing your story. Now the questions are coming in. Are you raising funds from investors is one question.
As of right now, I have a few investors that I am chatting with, but not right now, not at this moment. So we're in growth stuff mode, but very, very, very soon. There's a couple different like key things and key metrics that I want to have to be able to provide to investors, because another thing is that I don't want to be lowballed, right? Like, so there are a lot of like seed companies and like angel investors who will say, hey, you know, we can give you $20,000 today and tomorrow, but I know what my business has the potential to. And if Pharrell Williams and Black Ambition can invest $250K, I'm not taking anything but 5 times that, because I know what that investment has helped us to see. So yeah.
Woo, that gave me chills. Amazing. And then Keith says, what has scaling been like for you? If you could just speak to challenges thus far.
Absolutely. Scaling for me has been a blessing and eye-opening because it's happening so rapidly. I did see one question in the chat. We started in 2018 and now we're in 2022. So we just celebrated 4 years of business last month. It's been a whirlwind, right? But like we're moving with the times. And I think that like it's only really up from here. I think some of the challenges that I saw is that I needed help. So even between the time where we started in 2018 up until like March of last year, like right after we finished applying for Black Ambition, we only have 4 team members and I was doing everything myself, right? You know, so many orders, so many different plays, so many things are going into place. So the art of delegation has been something that I have been personally tasking myself to make sure that I'm doing better at. I will say, you know, 2022, my first resolution was like, girl, you need to learn how to ask for help. Because I have the Black Superwoman complex. Well, I'll get it done. But now I have a team of 10 who helps me in those different perspectives and those different, you know, key skill sets. And so one thing that I do outside of just selling our products is consulting. So one thing that I tell, you know, my customers and my clients is that you have to truly identify what your strong suits are. And then what are the things that you're kind of good at and what are the things you're not good at. I've been able to identify the things that I am not good at and that I'm kind of good at, and then delegate those to my team or help my team to help me find people who can help me in those areas so that I'm optimizing my time and that we're like really building a really good ecosystem.
Oh, that's amazing. Good feedback. And then we also have a question from Quayshawn. How did you know when it was time to leave your full-time job? That's a great question.
Absolutely. So I actually left my full-time job in September 22nd, which was my late grandfather's birthday. He was an entrepreneur in Philly. And I just felt like it was time after the Black Ambition funding, but also all of the deals and things that kind of came in after that and the eyes that we had on us. It really gave me the confidence to be like, listen, like you have to use this time to go forth, right? And so transparently, I took a leave of absence to say, hey, just in case, you know, this doesn't work out for this year and a half, you can fall back on your job. But all of the other opportunities from the salary that I was making an amazing salary at the Big Four firm that I was at. But me seeing these deals come in, you know, 2-3 times a month, I'm 10xing what my salary was, just by being myself and being rooted in something that was I'm pouring into, but that was pouring back into me. So when you feel like your business that, you know, you're pouring into it just as much as it is pouring back into you, and you're optimizing your time, that's when it's time to say, hey, strategy wise, financially wise, am I able to really take that leap of faith so that I can really put my all into this thing and see how it can grow and flourish?
Whew, this has been a whole TED Talk. We have time for one more question. There are a couple, but I will take this one. What soul investment, so I'm guessing in yourself, in your business, do you think brought you your biggest return so far?
Oh, that's a good one. I really want to say my sole investment that really has helped me to yield so much success is my time. Like I mentioned, like that last question is like, I can't think of a better move that I made except for fully investing my time into Doso Beauty. I wake up every day working for myself and working towards making our business better for people, right? Working on, hey, how can I optimize my website so that our consumers have an easier customer journey? How can I help people who don't know about Doso Beauty at all? And that was fulfilling to me. I would wake up in consulting and be like, oh, I got to go to work. Oh, I don't feel like being on these calls. And like when, you know, you're in that type of space, that's not mental strength, right? You know, like that's not you saying that, hey, I'm pouring again into something that's pouring right back into me. So me investing in myself was me saying, hey, it's time to do Doso Beauty full time, because you know the time that you are trying to optimize and allocate to 10 different things that aren't pulling all back into you, you know, that's not yielding you your great rate of return. So that's been the greatest investment, and a therapist too, because it gets lonely at the top, but also more than that, because I have such a great responsibility of employees, of consumers, and how they feel about themselves, about the products. I have a lot of stuff that's on me. So making sure that, you know, I'm investing in a great therapist was really, really important for me, and another great move that I made.
I love that. Okay, I do have to ask one last question because you are making us dream big. You're inspiring us. And one of the questions was like, what is your big, this from Radiance, your big ambitious, she put ambitious in all caps. What is that audacious goal that you have that we know you're going to accomplish?
Absolutely. So it's a bunch of them. Okay. Remember, I said 10 years old, I'm building an organic beauty empire. I had no clue what that meant. So one of our big, hairy, audacious goals is to actually start a business cosmetology school. So you see the cosmetology schools that are out there to help you to understand the tricks of the trade and how to actually style the hair. But one mismark I see is that like a lot of people don't have a lot of business acumen or know how to do business. And so not just within the States, but actually overseas. My father is from Abidjan, Ivory Coast. We're actually trying to figure out a space and how we can start to educate people on how to be better business owners so that they can optimize their businesses. Everything with Doso Beauty doesn't root back to us having more money. It roots back to the community and being connected and how we can help others. So I definitely want to get our beauty school up and running. For sure want to be in every Walmart, Target, and every other Black-owned beauty supply store specifically. And then also helping our soldiers out, right? So getting into the PXs, right? Getting wholesale deals with other boutique hotels and other Marriott hotels. So there's a ton of ideas on the table, some that are being tapped into thus far. So definitely stay connected with us, you know, on dosobeauty.com, Doso Beauty on our Instagram. Shoot me an email. I'll put it in the chat as well too, so that we can kind of chat and we can all synergize so we can create this ecosystem. Let's get this money, y'all. Black generational wealth.
Thank you so much, Kadidja. Yes, you have us screaming for you. You are the new, Dawn says, the new Madam CJ Walker. Yes, to community building. Yes to you being goals. Thank you so much. Please do stay connected with Kadidja. We've dropped all her information in the chat. This is who you want to follow the journey of, because I believe everything she just said is coming true very soon. Thank you so much. And now that you've heard from a Black Ambition Prize winner, I really do hope you stay plugged with Black Ambition so you can also have the power of this network and community working towards your business. We have another speaker that I know. I saw Louisiana in the building repping hard when folks were saying where they were from. So I do have to call out that we have another speaker, and Sevetri is going to be chatting with us about some amazing things. We called Sevetri in because we said, okay, if we're going to be talking about the power of virtual networking, if we're going to be talking about how we want to make sure we're bringing up our value in conversations, there's no better person to do this. So I'm just going to briefly introduce Sevetri, who is the founder and CEO of Resilia, which is a SaaS technology platform that helps nonprofit organizations increase capacity, enables funders to scale impact, and provide on-demand technical assistance to their partners. It's headquartered in New Orleans, which is where Sevetri is from. If anyone knows anything about Louisiana, this is Miss New Orleans right here. And she also has a second office in New York. Now they have a whole slate of accomplishments. Resilia was named as one of the top startups to Venture Beats in 2019. She's also been named Inc. Magazine's 100 Female Founders Building the World-Changing Companies. She's one of only 50 Black women in the US who have raised over $15 million in venture funding, and she's been named a rising star on Forbes Cloud 100 list. Every time I see Sevetri or hear from Sevetri, there is another accomplishment that keeps me inspired, motivated, and going. And we have the real thing here right with us. So I'm going to stop presenting and kick it over to Sevetri to get us going in conversation. Sevetri, are you with us? Can we hear from you?
You all? Congratulations. I mean, the story is just so inspiring, just thinking about like where people start. And Khadija, congratulations to you. Definitely flex, talk about all the good things, all the ways we can support you. And I'm just happy to be here. So thank you all for tuning in and joining us today.
I love that you said that, because I put that in the chat as well. When she was like, I don't want to, say too much. I'm like, no, you flex, because you're inspiring us. And I think that's really the theme of today. We're in Black History Month. We're talking about value, and we have to communicate our value. So before we get into some of your flexes and you help us share how we can flex better, can you just tell us a little bit about why you founded Resilia?
Yes. So I started my first company, Solid Ground Innovations, in 2009. And we were essentially a core strategic communications and management agency. We also had a nonprofit arm. And I started thinking about ways that we could reduce like the silos and gaps between our funders and their grantees that we were working with. And so I was like, okay, we would come in, we would work with all these nonprofits, all these organizations on behalf of these large funders like Kellogg and Ford. But as soon as we left, the likelihood of that work continuing without us was very rare. And so I thought about ways that we could essentially productize our service and deliver through a software solution. And that is what gave rise to Resilia. And what's important about that is because I didn't come from the tech space. And so hopefully I can definitely be an inspiration to non-technical founders, because sometimes non-technical founders, it can seem so hard to break into tech, but I'm here to say you can do it.
Yes. Oh, I love that story. I love hearing it. And so thinking back to the theme of this conversation, we're talking about building relationships in a virtual world. We want to drive more of those. When you hear that and you hear articulate your business value, what does that mean to you? And why is it so important for business owners to get good at this as early as possible?
Yes. So essentially, when you hear someone say that, or when you read it anywhere, you're trying to articulate your value proposition, right? So what is essentially the reason why I should care? What's the reason why I should invest? How can you articulate that as uncomplicated as possible to someone that they immediately get it, right? And want to either buy in or know someone that might be attracted to what you're doing. And so when you think about the idea of articulating your business value, as soon as you have a business, it's probably the first thing you should figure out how to do, because it is literally the most important thing starting off and over the course of your business existence.
And now as businesses grow and perhaps some of the services change or there are some pivots, does any of the way you approach sharing and communicating in relationships about your business change?
Absolutely. So, I wish I could have been like a fly on the wall when I was first like pitching or presenting my business. and describing it, right? Because I think that we generally we go through this journey when we're just starting up, and we definitely over time begin to strengthen how we speak about our business, and what that looks like. And so I always tell people, definitely you want to perfect it, but definitely give yourself grace in the beginning too, because we're all trying to figure it out, and we're all trying to figure out what clicks to people early on. And so I think that's really important when you think about it. And really get specific about, someone said monetization, right? That's a key thing as well. And so you're thinking about all these things, and eventually they tie into how you present your business and its value. And that also may change based on who you're actually presenting to as well, right? Who's in front of you. What you say in front of an investor might be different than what you say directly in front of a customer. I know that's the case with Resilia, because sometimes we're speaking the lingo of our customers and they get it, but investors, we have to switch a little bit to the left, because they're like, what? I don't even understand what capacity means. I don't even understand what some of the things that you're saying means. And so sometimes you have to pivot so that you're speaking the lingo of the individual that you're speaking to.
Yes, we talked about that earlier. Considering your audience and your communications is really important. Okay, so my favorite number today is 15 million, because you are one of the women who has raised that, at least that. So really, really excited to hear about that. To get to that place, and then there are some business owners in the room who are fundraising or will be fundraising. What do business owners, what's the key thing? If you could, too long, didn't read, what's the key thing business owners need to be thinking about when preparing to make a pitch? And then I have a part 2 of that. If you're networking, we have so many conferences coming up, virtual networking sessions, investors might be in the room. How do you engage them to even get to the place to pitch?
So I definitely would say you have to think about the who, the what, and the why, right? Who am I trying to get in front of? And does it make sense for me to be in front of them, particularly if I'm pitching for money, right? And you also think about the life cycle of your business and what you're presenting today. And so when I raised my first $400,000 in a pre-seed round, I raised it from more local investors. When I raised my $2 million seed round, I had to go a little bit outside of local. I had to go and raise in other cities. And so based on the amount that I was raising, what my investor looked like actually changed every single time I raised capital. When I went out and raised 8.5, then what eventually got me to 15 million, those investors look a lot different than the investors that I raised $400,000 from, right? And so you have to get really tight around the who and who invests in your type of company and at what stage are they investing in, right? When I think about the what, right? So how are you positioning yourself, your pitch, what it is that you are selling, the product, the service, you have to get really narrowed in on that what, and then the composition of what it looks like. So whether it's a pitch deck, whether it is, I have to do this elevator pitch really quickly to get people interested because I'm on a virtual Zoom and I have 30 seconds to pitch my company to get someone to want to follow up with me, or to remember me when I follow up with them, right? And then the why are you even raising capital to begin with? Oftentimes an investor will ask someone on the spot, why are you raising money? People are like, because I need money to do X, Y, and Z. But it's does that actually, does that spark the investors to say, actually, yeah, you are right. You do need money to do this, this, and this. And you articulated why you needed that, why you needed the capital to begin with. Sometimes our why could be so all over the place that investors come back to me when you get it together, right? Because we're just not tight enough around that why we need investment. And that's why investors will be oh, you don't need an investment. You think you need it, but you really don't. And maybe that's the truth, right? But maybe it's not the truth and you just don't know how to articulate it well enough.
Right. I love that point. So when you figured out the who, the what, the why, you have to make contact with these people somewhere. So how are we doing it? How did you do it? And what would be your advice for people in the room now? Is it going to events, in virtual Zooms where they're speaking? How do we capture their attention? How do we make sure that we build the relationship with them?
So I will say now is probably the best time you could be Black and raising capital across the board. And it's so much easier to get in touch with investors. Like I had to run around chasing behind investors to get capital because the expectation was I might have an initial call with you, but eventually, if you wanted to see capital coming your way, I had to go meet you in person, right? And so the dynamics of that has changed so tremendously, which is a great thing for founders and individuals seeking to raise capital. And I think that the best way to get in front of investors, one, is being in a place, right, where they are. So that can be in person, or if you're at an event somewhere and investors are going to be there, to get in person so that you can follow up with them and have a frame of commonality, right? So we were at an event or we were on this virtual call, and I would love to tell you more about my company. The second way is to get an introduction. And most people put this at first, but I think that if you meet an investor or you're in a space with them, it's really about that commonality that you have to make that connection in some form or fashion, whether that be an intro or being where they were and connecting dots that way. I'm not a huge believer. I know people say they've got more comfortable with cold outreach, and it does work depending on the specific type of investor, but there's nothing like creating some type of commonality between an investor, whether that's via an intro from another founder or via actually being in the same place as an investor and making that connection to them. Because what they're going to say is, oh, if I was here and you were here, we both were meant to be here, right, in this place. And those type of connections are like really important when you're trying to get an investor take you seriously and actually listen through your pitch and what you're presenting. And all money isn't good money. I saw somebody drop that in the comments.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so glad you're sharing these points too, because it is about sometimes just being in the room. And earlier I was talking about when you're getting a business started, sometimes that is the hardest part, is to encourage yourself to be in the room. So it's really important, especially for those of you that might be introverted, that maybe have some social anxiety. How do we need to figure out ways to move past that and think about being goal focused if you're in a pitching season for either investors or clients.
Yes. And I'm naturally an introvert. Most people like, Sevetri, you're lying. You're not naturally an introvert. I am naturally an introvert. And so definitely introverted, extrovert, or however you want to call it over time. But I remember, needing to raise my seed, and Black Enterprise was having a tech conference in the Bay Area. And I saw that someone that I really wanted as an investor was going to be there. And I booked the ticket, booked my flight, and I was there in the building with basically peanuts, right? Because I hadn't raised a lot of money or had money to be traveling on, but I wanted to get in front of that investor. And as soon as she came off stage, they went on to the next panel, and I exited left, and I got her card, and I emailed her immediately, and she connected me to and one of their partners. And so it's definitely, those type of things where people are like, how do I stand out? How do I get in front of people in a way that makes them take my company seriously to invest in? And because it may seem like a lot of money is flowing, because it is, but generally speaking, a lot of money is being invested in later stage companies, right? Mm-hmm. And so the numbers for example, like Black women founders are still very, very low. So although it may seem like we're getting all this money, the reality is that it's still very, very small, almost non-existent in comparison to these white men. So yeah, we still got a lot of work to do and things that we got to maneuver differently than a lot of people do.
And I'm really glad you said that, because what I heard is you, even before you got the funding, before you had figured out necessarily how you were going to get all the money, you had to spend money, you had to invest, you had to say, I'm going to go to this conference, I'm doing my research, I'm making a plan about who I'm going to network with. And so that is really important, I think, when thinking about how do I approach clients or get clients, how do I get investors when I'm getting started, is being willing to invest some time to be where they are, being in the room, having them meet you is so important. So I'm glad that you called that out. Now, I hope that will give a homework assignment to everyone in the room. If there is a client or investor that you are trying to get in touch with, find out where they are, find out if they're speaking somewhere, and pop up on them and be aggressive.
Oh, yes.
Now, last year, a Forbes article talked about some of the most important factors in crafting a pitch. You have pitched many, many times. So I want to see if you align with some of the things they called out, or what you would say are even more important things to keep in mind. They call out using relevant analogies, focusing on value prop. We talked about that. Focusing on pain points of the customer, communicating business value, and being really personalized in the pitch. So out of those points, do you align with them? Are there some other non-conventional factors that you think business owners in the room should be thinking about when crafting a pitch?
So I agree with all those points, right? So you're trying to articulate your vision, your value prop, the actual problem. Sometimes people miss that entirely. They skip right to why, it's so important for you to buy or have or invest in. If they skip the actual problem they're solving for, or the market opportunity, right? Go to market strategy, right? So how you're actually going to get your product or service in market is important. Your team, and if you don't have a team, you got to create something, your financials, all these things are really important. But some things that I think we don't talk enough about is having your personal story, particularly early on, and how compelling that can be. Because when you're talking about like the first dollars in the company, many times, most times, almost 99% of the times, investors are investing in the founder themselves. And so what's going to like stick with them about your story and what makes you the person to take this company to the next level. Also, don't overstate or understate the market opportunity, right? This is because I am an angel investor, and I can tell you my eyes start glazing over when people are like, yeah, we're going to be $1 billion in 2 years. How? Because this deck don't show me how you about to get there. And I don't understand how you going to make $1 billion in the next 18 months, right? Because you're just raising this small, less than $1 million round. So I don't know how this is going to happen. So don't overstate the market opportunity, right? Even though your market may be big enough for you to get there, you definitely have to create a realistic path to your growth and your scale. And then don't understate the opportunity either. I remember when I was first starting out and I presented like my financials and my growth projections over the next few years to an investor. And this woman investor told me, don't ever show these financials again. They're not big enough, right? Mm-hmm. They're not even big enough for me to even take you seriously as a tech company. And so definitely don't understate or overstate the opportunity when you're pitching to an investor. And then most importantly, like ask for the money. So many founders will give this perfect pitch, and at the end they're like, yeah, and we just need about 400,000 or $1 million, but if we don't get $1 million, we'll take 500,000. I'm like, if you need $1 million, say you need $1 million, right? If you need 3 million, say you need 3 million. If you only need 400,000, say we need $400,000, right? But make the ask and make a hard ask and say, this is what we're going to do with it, right? And so those are some other things that I don't think really people hone in on, because they're like, oh, I need these 12 pages to be in my pitch deck, and they stick to those 12 pages. But yes, someone say it with your chest. Yes.
Say it with your chest. I love that. Oh my goodness. So the questions are rolling in. Please keep the questions coming, because these questions in the chat are good. Tawana says, Sevetri, Kadidja, when she was sharing her story, she was talking about waiting for venture. For you, what were some of the personal milestones you set before you accepted venture capital?
Yeah. So I mentioned briefly through my introduction that I had a company called Solid Ground Innovations. And so Solid Ground, I bootstrapped to a 7-figure company, never took $1 for it, never took any investor capital for it. And it actually allowed me to invest my first money into Resilia before I raised capital. And so I actually already had a minimum viable product when I went to raise capital from investors. And so historically, when I would raise like another round, my investor's like, oh, wow, you kept so much of your company this far. Like still majority owner at $15 million later. And it's because I started out very lean and bootstrapped early on before I started taking investment capital. And so because of that, investors definitely, they can say, my board can say a lot, but they can't say more than what I want to do, because I have maintained control for a long period of time with my raises. And I've been able to pick the investors that I wanted because of that as well. And that is what like really matters. Because when you think about wanting control of your business, if you're a venture-backed company, eventually you may go into a minority majority, right? Where you still have majority, but another investor might have majority too. But if you pick the right investors who are for what you are for and for you as the founder of that company, it becomes less important. What becomes more important is who controls the company still and who's on your side. And when founders pick the wrong investors, it's just like, you don't even want to get up in the morning and go to work because you're not even working for yourself anymore. You're working for these outside forces who are pushing you in one direction or the other. And so definitely, I'm a big proponent of bootstrapping. And I'm a big proponent of also us having access to capital when we need it.
I love that. I love that so much. It's really about getting your value clear. And so a lot of alignment between your story and Khadijah's story as well. I have so many questions. Okay, keep the questions coming in the chat. There's some there too. And then I have follow-up questions. So when you were at that stage where you were evaluating your first deal with an investor, who was in your circle? Who was your network? Who did you turn to for feedback and insights to make sure you were having the clearest right decision?
So, it's interesting because as I mentioned, I came from an agency type company and a bootstrap company. And so when I was like, oh, I'm going to break into tech, there was no one in tech around me at all. So I was like, okay, I need to go find my tribe. And so I was okay, Google search on Twitter, which is like where all the investors and all the founders are. And I started following people and I was like, oh, wow, look what this person has done. And look what that person has done. And I would reach out to people via LinkedIn, or if I knew people were going to be at conferences, I would try to connect with them there and really just create that rapport in general to build my community in tech. I also was involved in like a local accelerator here in New Orleans that further deepened my understanding and knowledge around tech and the ecosystem and the players that I needed around me. And that's from like go to market, who does financials. Like someone mentioned financials being a huge like gap for us, not knowing how to put together our financials correctly. And let me tell you, 9 times out of 10, what sinks an investment for founders is because they don't have their financials together. And so it's really important. And so through my ecosystem, I connected with people who were putting together financials for scalable and venture-backed companies, which is different from people who are putting financials together for a small business or a traditional agency like I had been in. And so I had to get really introduced to the ecosystem to find what I needed. And I was very like adamant about doing that.
I love that. So again, another one on the power of network. We have to be at these conferences. We have to be not just in our screens and in our business plan, but we need to be networking with people and building our ecosystem. I love that. So one of the questions that came up from Brad, can strategic investors bring strategic partnerships to the table?
I hope so. That's the best type of investor to me. You can bring money and more money and more opportunity. Yes, sign me up for those type of investors all day.
Okay, good. So then that ties into Brandy's question, which is, what is your criteria for choosing investors?
So I know, and I don't want to be light on the fact that I'm like, oh, pick your investors that are for you, because sometimes when you're trying to get money in the door and it's versus you getting money and you not having a company, right, tomorrow, that I don't want to understate that, right? But I don't want to also understate the fact that you have to have the right investors, because when I was looking for investors, I was like, okay, does this person really truly back me as a founder and believe in my vision for the company? You're going to see more of that, I feel like, early on, but you also don't want investors who really, maybe they want to be in your spot and they think they can do what you do better. And so I've seen investors like that who are too involved with the company. And so my type of investors are investors that are going to come in, they back my vision for the company. They're going to be supportive in helping bring new customers and clients to the table, new partnership opportunities to the table, and going to truly help us grow. So like on my board, which is made up of a significant amount of investors, I have a board member and investor who not only has invested money, but is like great on product. And so anytime I need help with product and I want him to review something, I want him to interview someone who we're looking at from R&D, my CTO, he helped me hire, that's his thing. Then I have another investor. She's really big with our customer base. So she understands our customer base and our clientele base. She introduced me to one of their limited partners who helps us with HR practices. And so I look for investors who definitely are not just a monetary contribution, but one that they're going to also bring something else to the table that's going to help us continue to scale as a company. And then obviously you want those investors who are backing you and your vision, and not necessarily like going along with everything that you say, because you don't want that type of investor either, but you definitely want people who aren't going to be like trying to overtalk you in meetings and, they think that they smarter than you and all these other things when it comes to the core of the business that you built. And so those are some of the things that I think about when I'm looking for investors as a whole. And then as you get like later stage, you'll look for investors who can like follow on investment. And people always talk about that. Can an investor write another check? When you raise more money, those are type of things that are important as well. But yeah, those are just a few things I think about.
Okay, awesome. So many questions, and I have one too, but here's one from the chat. I have a VC firm meeting, and there's institutional knowledge that at times can be gatekept. How do we express our sense of urgency without the advisor or investor dictating the language to strategic partners?
I'm trying to make sure I understand your question. And so dictating the timeline or dictating the strategic partners threw me off a little bit. So
okay, Brad, if you could follow up with a little more detail on your question so we can get you the right answer. And as you're typing that in, I have another question for you because this came up. One of the things that Kadidja said that really resonated with me is this year, 2022, she's doing more delegation. She has a team, and this is all helping her grow and expand. And you also have quite a large team, and your team continues to grow. So one thing that we should all be keeping in mind is as your business grows, there might be a shift in your role. So could you talk a little bit about the evolution of what being a CEO in your business has been like? And then how has your role shifted as your business expands?
Less people report to me. That's been a huge plus. And in fact, when I start like hiring, and that's why I always tell people when like you apply for a role, don't think I'm going to look at it, because my position, like my role has changed where it may not be me hiring for the role. It's only a very few roles that I actually directly hire for now.
Mm-hmm.
And so think about like delegation. That's been like a wonderful thing as like the company has scaled and grown, where I can depend on people to get things done. And that might seem very simple, but that's not always simple when you're growing your business and you have to wear so many hats, and you want to delegate, but you feel like, will this get done if I delegate it out? Will it get done the way I want it to get done? All these different things kind of run through your head, but giving people the space and time and trying to hire, capable people that you can actually give things to is super important. And it's levels to it, right? And so early on, you may not be able to delegate as much, but as you grow, you will be able to do that. And so now my focus as a CEO is on like hiring a senior leadership team. It's on focus on like sales. So going and get like large scale customers, meaning like when it comes to like 7-figure contract opportunities, those are usually the contract opportunities that I focus my time on. And I have a team that essentially is mid-market and down. And so trying to get like really tailored around that, you also become more of the face of your company, right? And so when you're talking about like doing more speaking engagements or being in front and being present, you're able to do that more and not feeling like you're so tightly strained around your business. But you also have to be the stakeholder that's dealing with like your investors for me, right? So investors board, that's where I spend a lot of my time. Raising capital, I haven't found I don't delegate raising any type of financing. So all these things are super important. And I do think I understand your question now, Brad. I just read it in the chat, so. happy to give some.
Yes, please. Let's take that. Let's take Brad's question.
Yes. So it does seem like your investor is trying to like, or potential investor. I'm not sure if he is an existing investor or a potential investor. So if he's a potential investor, that's why he's safeguarding the conversation, right? And that's why he's trying to keep like his contact kind of close to the chest, because he also wants to hear what that person says, right? And what that person, how they engage you, how you engage them. So in many ways, it's kind of like a diligence factor that's happening there between them and that connection that they have. Because the way it's supposed to work, and the way it can still work, even if that person hasn't invested in your company yet, is that they should make the direct introduction and move out the way. And only time that they should re-engage is to actually help you when you reach back out to them and say, okay, we're here with this deal. It would be great for you to follow up with them and try to give them a little nudge or to see where they are, right, with this conversation. But other than that, they should kind of move out the way and actually give you the partnership and the relationship directly. And that is the type of investor that you want to see, that moves out the way and that isn't trying to actually conceal this type of knowledge, right, from you. They just move out the way and they just play as an advisor behind the scenes for you.
Awesome. And we only have a few more minutes for audience questions, so please do make sure you put them in the chat. But I can talk to you all day. I have questions for days, but I have a couple more as those audience questions are coming in. So one of the things we talk about, building team. You've built a team. Khadijah's built a team. I'm situated in a similar place, and you talk about that role of being the face of your business. How do you, as I'm sure there are so many people, you're so visible and people are so inspired by your story, how do you connect and mentor and share feedback when you also have to be focused on developing your team as a business leader?
So I think that there is like a balance, right, that you have to like strike. And I talk to a lot of founders who are like, oh, I do not want to be the face. I just want to be behind the scenes. Maybe I can put someone else up. It's like, no, it has to be you. Everybody knows who the CEO of Facebook is. Everybody knows who the CEO of Bumble is. It is what it is. People like people, and that's like the intentional part of like why people buy into things oftentimes and what creates and crafts a story around the company. But in doing that, you also don't want to become like the founder or the CEO who team is like, oh, there she go on another board. She ain't attended a meeting and I haven't seen her face in 3 weeks, but I see her online somewhere. Particularly when you have a small team, you have to be like really, really present as much as possible. And I'm definitely someone who has also going back and forth with people management, right? So I manage like my team now, but as my team is growing, I'm like, oh my gosh, all these people, I have to manage all these people. And I had to be connected to them in a way where they feel like they belong and they have access, enough access where they feel like they aren't being like overlooked. And so, for me, we do like donuts, which is something that is like connected with Slack. And like every once in a while, once a week or once every other week, I'll have like a 30-minute call with a team member that I don't communicate with on a regular basis. And we talk about whatever. And so I think those type of relationships and creating that type of connectivity inside your company with your team is important. And it's also important that you have some representation in the public view that continues to talk and express what your company does and being the face of the company as a whole.
I love that. That's so important and so powerful. And also, you sort of spoke to Leah's question, which was, how do you build team and culture when you're in the early stages of the business? The other thing I would say too, to Leah, is plan for scale. So for example, when I look at an org chart for my company, we always have what's current and what we will do when we get to that next stage where we can hire a couple more people. So the plan, keeping in mind what your next stage of the structure you want it to look like, is really important. And let's see if there are any other questions in the chat. If not, I will come to my own. I'm already seeing, for example, people want to know part 2. They want more Sevetri, more Kadidja. I need this. I agree. Make sure you follow both of them so you can be in touch with their stories and their journeys. Okay, so one of the things you talk about being the face of the business, and you definitely are the master of articulating the value of your business. That's why you're on the bigger contracts and really focus there. How do you skill your people and also understanding and effectively communicating the value of your business as well?
So I do feel that training is super important. That's something that we always have gotten like really good reviews back from team members, is that they felt when they came into the company that they immediately started receiving like training, and how to represent the company, how to position the company. We have like access anything sessions. We have knowledge happy hours. And so we're really big on ensuring that our company is communicated correctly across our team members. Because I remember there was something that I read. I'm like, what? I was reading an email that one of our account executives sent out. I'm like, where did they get this up from? Let me pick up let me send them an email and schedule a call, because something must have got lost in just the translation of how we were trying to position ourselves. And so I would definitely say don't skimp training. I know I've talked to a lot of people who were like, yeah, I was like thrown in the fire in this company and I didn't know anything. I had to like figure it out along the way. And the issue with people figuring it out along the way is they kind of begin to create their own culture and their own way of doing things. And so another person comes in and they learn it the way this person told them. And then you're like, well, that's not how we do things. And they're like, well, so I just said that's how they taught me, because there isn't a unified training and learning understanding of like how we represent ourselves as a company. It's definitely, even if it's like with interns, begin to create that foundation early on of like the very fundamental things you want your team members to know and people to know, and how they talk about the company and represent the company.
Wow, thank you so much for that. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Those early training decks matter so much. Keep refreshing them and sharing that. There were so many gems dropped today. That is coming straight from the Black Ambition CEO, or Felicia Hatcher. So we're all excited about all the gems that were dropped today. We thank you both for your time, Sevetri. It is always an honor to hear from you. Kadidja, you inspired us all with your story, with your growth. We're really excited to continue following your journey. As we close, I just want to know from each of you, what is that one thing that you want people to do to engage with you, support you in any way that we can? And I'll take Kadidja first, then Sevetri.
Absolutely. We have an amazing Black History Month page and landing page where we talk about Black Hair Reimagined. So if you would love to engage with us on our website, would love to connect with y'all. Again, I talked about ecosystem. So yes, we sell beauty products, but there's multiple different types of our business, right? So I'm sure that we all can connect in some different type of way. So if we can connect on LinkedIn, connect through the website, or connect via email, that would be super awesome. And I'll drop my email below as well too.
And Sevetri, how can we support you?
So definitely Resilia.co, that's our Instagram page. We're constantly trying to continue to like engage community. We're always, every quarter we do like grants to nonprofits. Definitely recommend some of your favorite nonprofits. We're definitely expanding that opportunity as well. And so definitely visit us online, Instagram, sign up for our newsletter, and just stay in touch. And I'll make sure I drop it in the chat as well.
We got you in the chat. Thank you both so much for your time. Thank you everyone for being here today. Running a business requires community, so I'm glad that we can be a part of your community. And some of you asked for a part 2. Our next event with Black Ambition will be in April, so make sure you're following to stay tuned for that. Thank you, everyone.